Done. There we are.
Hello. Welcome everybody, people who are watching now the Vienna Shorts Film Festival. This is our talk, our Animation Avantgarde talk this year. I would like to introduce Wiktoria Pelzer. She and me, Thomas Renoldner, we are selecting every year the Animation Avantgarde programs, Animation Avantgarde competition, which is focusing on animation and experimental film video art. And we try to discover new talents and show new perspectives and innovative films and so on. And we are very lucky to have two guests here this year, Alexandre Alagôa and Katharina Huber. A few words why we selected them. We wanted to have, our program tries to have contrasts, like from abstract to narrative, and that's the case in this. That's the case here also. Alexandre stands more for the experimental and avant-garde film, and Katharina Huber film is more narrative. But both of them are very, very interesting and very innovative, very open to different perspectives, I would say. So we start with Alexandre now. He will have a 15-minute presentation, and afterwards we will talk a bit. Maybe a few words about him. He's a very I think that's what combines Katharina and Alexandre, that they are quite multidisciplinary artists. Um, Alexandra also is doing performance, object art, video, and a lot of things. Yeah, I just stop now and let him speak.
Thank you so much, Thomas, Victoria. It's wonderful to be here, and yeah, thank you for the time to speak a little bit about my film and Katharina's. So for my presentation, maybe I'll start sharing my screen with you. So give me a few seconds. Okay. Uh, all right. Everything is good. You can see my screen, I guess. Um, Okay, so my approach to filmmaking always follows these two sides. Let's say one side can be quite academic, so it's very research based. So I take my time to look into film theory and history and visual culture, and then that will feed the other side, which is of course my praxis. My practical side can be quite experimental, as Thomas mentioned, but I think in a way it can also be quite methodic, and I think I open space as well for improvisation. So I thought it would be interesting to give you a very general idea of the conceptual basis for the film. So what is behind um, the film? And in that regard, the film grid unfolds from these two main topics. First, structural film, which comes from, it's an approach to filmmaking from the 60s, 70s, mostly coming from Michael Snow, Tony Conrad, among many others. And Sidney would be an important figure uh, as well regarding writing about this approach. Then on the other hand, we have let's say the conceptual dimension of the grid, which I started to look into mostly through Krauss and Hannah Higgins. So for the presentation, I will only focus on structural film, but I thought this first slide maybe could be interesting for you to have just a very beginning point or references to my film. Um, so going into the structural film, it's a term that is introduced by Sidney in the 60s, 70s. A very like I said, very important figure, a historian, teacher to avant-garde cinema, and he uses this term to bring together and discuss the work and new approaches of filmmakers at the time, like Michael Snow, Ernest Paul Charitz, Tony Conrad, uh, among many others. And I also took the liberty to mention Takashi Ito, and I should have mentioned another one, Toshio Matsumoto. These are artists from Japan, but then I think their approaches also relate to structural film. So this group of artists at the time, they were kind of moving away from narrative, even from representation, symbolism, creating any sort of symbolic meanings or poetic meanings or any meanings at all, really, in order to invest much more precisely and much more directly in the raw and immediate processes of the film as a medium. The film has a mechanical medium, the film has a physical medium. So they are not really interested in creating any sort of story or narrative or plot, but rather to explore the mechanical and technical qualities of film, to bring forward these material and formal aspects of film, which tend to kind of be left out, let's say, in more traditional cinema. And then as well to emphasize this awareness of time and duration, and consequently on kind of the physical impact they have in the audience. So endurance is quite an important quality as well to these filmmakers. So going a bit into these features and going into my film, which of course follows, I would say, this tradition. With the mechanical and technical qualities, we can think, for example, of the camera. So we have, in my film, I think we have a very conscious presence and awareness of the camera, almost as the main character of the film. And by that, I mean, if there are no characters, if there is no plot at all, then the camera is, loses its dependency on them and is now free to execute, to explore any sort of movements, properties like zooms, panoramics. So the manipulation of the camera and its relationship with the object, in my case, this building, starts to, or I hope it does, starts to inevitably impacts the way we see and experience the film. So if we take the image on the left, so we start with, this is one of the first images in the film. We start with a very, let's say, standard way of seeing a film, of seeing the building, as much as there is a consensus to that. But once I start to introduce these movements into the water, or once I start to increase the speed, or once I start to kind of put the building upside down, then I think that is something that we are not so used to in our normal perception of the world. And I think that starts to challenge and to make us aware of, let's say, of our own perception of our even balance, of the act of seeing a film in itself. So mechanical manipulation of the camera is quite important for me. Now going into the second feature that I mentioned, the material and formal aspects of the medium of film, we can relate, for example, to the screen. The screen, in a way, has a flat surface, but then it's also its relationship to illusion and to space and to depth. So I think this idea of three-dimensionality, flatness, bidimensionality is always very present in my film. And I think here it's important to mention maybe the work of Michael Snow, because he speaks about this idea of film, of making a film, taking into account a balance between two realities, let's say. First, we have our own reality. So from the moment we start filming something, we are immediately documenting it or representing it. And this is something that goes back to the ideas of Bazin and Roland Barthes with the ontology of photography. But then there's also the reality of the medium itself, where we can take an advantage of its material, mechanical, formal aspects to maybe go somewhere else. So I think here I try to do it in different ways. First, through an obvious presentation of the screen as the basic element for film. So that's why the first image is just a white canvas. And the second image is actually this sort of cave almost. So this is the minus floor of the building. And I see it almost as a cinema room or something, where it's completely dark and we have this white square there. Secondly, I try to explore, again, this idea of flatness and depth through the use of the movement against the wall. So we start again with a very normal, standard way of seeing the building. So we have this illusion of depth, but then once we go against the wall, the surface of the wall becomes superimposed with the screen itself. So I think we are always balancing between these two states, illusion of depth, three-dimensionality, but then the flatness and the surface of the screen. So I kind of want the audience to be aware of, let's say, these devices uh, to the medium. And then finally, through the use of camera movement and speed, where again we go from this very three-dimensional sculptural uh, sense of the building, but I think once the movement is so, the speed increases in such a way that I think the image becomes almost liquid. And this is something that I've been quite interested even more recently, even outside of film, maybe more with installation. But this idea of achieving almost a formlessness to the image becomes almost tactile. But of course, in the context of the film, I do that mostly through movement. So again, we have a very normal view of the building, but then once I start to explore the speed, the movement, I think we go to a more abstract, to a more liquid state of the image. And now, yeah, to finish, I just wanted to talk again about the importance of time and the awareness of time, because I think the film is very repetitive. It plays with long durations, with repetition. And I do that because I'm really interested in this physical aspect to film. So there's almost capacity of film to kind of induce the audience into a ritual, into a kind of mantra. So this is something that I'm really, really interested in. And I think working with frames, going from this very unity of the film and then kind of play with it and expanding it, I think it really enhances that capacity for film to just have a, you know, instead of us having a passive role in the cinema room, I really want the audience to experience film not only with their eyes but with their whole body, with their organic system, let's say. So yeah, this kind of concludes the presentation. These are just a few ideas that I was very interested in while making the film relating to structural film. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I think at this point it might make most sense to have a little view of your film, to play the clip now, because in order to continue our discussion, also for the audience, I think it makes sense to have a look of the film right now. Can we have this? So. So the whole film is how long exactly?
It's 14 minutes.
14 minutes, and it's kind of a really hypnotic experience to watch it. I think that's the fascination of experimental film for me, to explore dimensions beyond reality, to enter some space which you cannot experience in your real life. That's what art maybe in general can achieve, to open dimensions, worlds which are beyond reality. And one aspect I would like to mention especially is the sound, because for me that's a really audiovisual experience to go into your world. So, and you're really doing everything alone. You also make the music yourself. You don't have assistance in that. So it's, how is it? When is the moment you add the sound or think about it?
Yes, the sound I made it all myself. Let's say I think the sound work, just like the image work, has they work in parallel. So I did start to kind of collect the first samples in the building itself. So while I was doing the image, I was also recording in that building in different places, different floors, different days in the building. But I think then there's, at least for me, there's kind of a period of pause where I just focus on the image, and then when I have a sense of what I want with the image, then the sound just complements it. So I wanted the sound to be very tactile almost. So there are a few elements like the water or like rocks that are always present, and they are very characteristic of the building. Um, but here I really wanted the sound to play with the impact uh, against the wall. So that was kind of the starting point for me to understand where to go with the sound and the image, I think. So I think everything started with the water drop. That is, like I was mentioning, this physical aspect to um, to the film and kind of to the whole experience of film is really interesting for me. So the way I started to work with sound was, and this idea of the water drop came kind of from water tortures that I was looking into, from Nordic stories and also from Chinese uh, old civilizations, that they would have this torture of tying someone up and then having a water drop constantly just dripping on the person's head for hours, days. So that's where kind of the sound work kind of started, let's say.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Maybe I would like to insist a little bit more on this question about musician, because you are a musician, and we could look at the piece already without sound like a piece of music, because it has elements like rhythm, repetition, speed, and certain formulas or structures which are used in music as well. If when you're going into this work, how much is it also a kind of musical idea you have when you start before, or is it really you first develop your rhythms and your structure in the picture and then you add the music like afterwards? Or is it, how much how much is the fact that you're a musician structuring your work on the picture or on the image as well?
Mhm. I think I think there's definitely almost yeah, there's a musical aspect to it, uh, but I also think um, how can I put it? So let's say not, it doesn't really come from this more traditional side of music that I have this background in, let's say more theoretical. But I think later on when I started to maybe discover the work of like John Cage, Alvin Lucier, and other artists, I think that's when I start to have another sense of how I could use sound. So indeed there is the, let's say, this background there, but I think then the approach can be much more experimental in what comes to the sound. But there's definitely, being in contact and being myself, let's say, a electronic artist of some sorts, then there are some concepts like the granular synthesis um, that I applied to the making of the sound and to exploring the sound. Um, so yeah.
Um, okay, a quite simple question, because
Yep.
how do you move this camera? I mean, it's,
Oh,
how can you do
yes.
that? I mean, that's so precise and so yeah, so precise, and there are no reels to see. So how is it made?
Mhm.
Uh,
The camera work, um, I made measures, some measures in the building, and then it was kind of almost mathematical approach to the building and to how I could navigate the building with it. So the camera is always on a tripod. The floor is always with specific measures, especially going into the water. Although the movement of the into the water can be quite more improvised, but yeah, there's always a tripod. There's always measures on the floor for me to have some sort of guidance on how to move and where to move. So yeah, it took some time. Yeah.
I find it really fascinating when you just talked about this room kind of resembling a cinema, because probably that's something that I really didn't see so much, but unconsciously I kind of realized it, and I find it super interesting that you're talking about it. And I'm very drawn also into this very structural and mathematical thing, but then I find it so so special that that you have a place that is, of course, like there's the lines and everything, but then you have the water drops or the irregularities on the concrete, or you're going out then and seeing the sky. So it's kind of a combination of those two. Can you talk a little bit about also the place, why it was so important for you to really do it there, and about this maybe combination and yeah, how these two things maybe come together and yeah.
Yeah, going from the beginning, yes, the place is in my hometown in Portugal, Sesimbra. So it's the building has been like that for ages, really, for I would say almost 10 years. And the first time I got there, I found it really fascinating how kind of quiet and how yeah, calm just it is being there. And then it was curious because during winter it started to rain so much inside the building that it just created those big pools of water, those almost mirrors on the floor. And that was something I was not really expecting. And but it is something that relates to my previous work, my let's say my previous short film that I did. So I thought immediately I had to do something with it. I mean, these mirrors were just too tempting, let's say, not to explore. And I think that's where the water came in, and as well going back to Thomas's questions about sound. That's where I thought, okay, if I'm using the water so much, then I have to almost have this musical approach with the water. So Alex, let's just focus on the elements inside the building and then just build everything from there. And to finish just with this kind of the camera going inside the concrete or going into the sky, that was those moments were really just made in the moment. So I think I just started with this, like you mentioned, this mathematical approach to the building. But then while I was there for a few months, years, then I could almost discover new things inside of the building. I think that's inevitable to the whole process of just making a film. You just discover things as you go along. But the beginning attempt to work inside the building was just that there was nothing there. So it was kind of a challenge that I set to myself. Yeah.
I think we don't have so much time anymore, but maybe I discovered I was exploring your website, and I found that you have a rich body of work, like object art, performance, and I also watched the films you made before and think it seems you have been working with the human body before, like using performance, and then it was getting less and less in this film you did before Vortex. it's a bit similar to this one, but it's in a private room, so there's still the presence of humans because it's a private room, and now it really disappears, and you are in the abstract space. Is the human? Is this something disappearing in your work, or what is the? Where are you going to? I mean, and the other question connected to it. I see you have been working 4 years on this film. It's written 2017 to 21, so it was a huge, long process with an empty room. So that's I was asking myself, yeah, why it took so long also. There were too many questions at once now.
No, it's fine. It's interesting about the body. I actually didn't think about it, but maybe that's something I need to think maybe. But yeah, I guess at the time while making the film, I was just more and more interested of just losing humanity, let's say, in the film, in my let's say my short films. But it is actually something that I've been a bit more interested lately to work with people, and I've been much more interested in even in narrative cinema and documentaries. I mean, I've always been, but I mean, from myself, this will maybe to explore that side. And I think the question of time, I think it's just something that I just went along with it. I think in a way, at a certain point, the film starts to dictate or kind of ask you the time that it needs. I think so. I never really want to impose time on my film, but rather that the film um, just goes on, and I go and I go along with it. So it's really just about respecting time, let's say, and just letting things present themselves, I would say. Yes.
Okay. I see we have finished first half an hour. Are there any more questions at this point? Maybe.
I could actually ask something, if I may.
Yes, please.
Because you've been talking so much about, the experience also with the body, tactile image, and also the sound. So I was wondering, and you're talking a lot about screen and film. So, but is it analog photography, or did you do it all digitally?
It's digital, Katharina. Yes.
Because of course the tactility comes, and also you're using the word film. Of course, we nowadays use film for sort of like any kind of moving, video, film. But in that case, because I thought now that after hearing you that it might have been analog, because the tactility comes there, and then as an experience, there is a difference still somehow.
Yes, I totally agree. There is a difference. I honestly wish it was film, actual film, analog. But yeah, it's something I really couldn't afford. But yeah, that really interests me still, and that the physical aspect, the film aspect of film, of cinema. Yeah.
I mean, for the audience, maybe looking at it, I'm sometimes not sure if there's that big of a difference. Then, of course, we see the grain, but you can do it also digitally, because there are these people, this arguing also what is real film. But in that case, because you're so conceptual, I thought this would go one step further, But it's a pity now that I've seen it on the small screen. This is definitely a work to be seen on the big screen, to be able to immerse into this. I think that definitely, needs this to be able to experience it, as you say, physically.
Yes, I think definitely there is definitely a difference. I mean, of course, nowadays we adapt, but yeah, I really miss, and the film was definitely made for that big screen and to the cinema room. Yeah.
because it's you feel it's quite violent in some sense also. So I'm sorry, I'm just confirming. It's a pity we can't see it on a big screen, because I think it would have a different, also much even stronger impact.
So at least for those who are in Vienna, tomorrow will be the chance to see it on Sunday on the big screen. Yeah.
And also the sound, because it goes from this drip to the punch in a way. Kind of a nice, like, sweet sound to very, again, something quite violent. I don't know, but not in a bad sense, because it just makes you, or forces you to feel, you know, the surface and the material. Well, sorry, I'm not very articulate right now.
No, it's definitely, I think, that physical aspect of the sound is really important for me, for sure. And it's like I said, this almost mantra state that I try to somehow create. I don't know if I achieve it or not, but it's really something that interests me, for sure.
I think it could be even longer.
It might, it maybe, yes.
I guess if you're exhibiting it in not in like in a different sort of space, not as for the cinema, but in installation or museum, I think you could go further with the duration, because you also said you're thinking about time, and I think it could be
there's something I could, for sure, there's something to explore, and maybe this goes a bit out of context, but I'm still exploring the building, and there are still images in the building that I want to maybe explore in an installation format. And I think time there, like you were mentioning, it will again be very important, I think. So it's not over yet.
No, it's very rich. I mean, again, imagining seeing it on a big screen, especially when it all starts, as you say, becoming liquid, it's almost psychedelic. It does something to the perception.
Absolutely.
So, and I think at that point you can try out like where the borders maybe go even further with the duration to, you know, because the perceptions, I feel like, needs sometimes even more time to adjust or let go, you know, and not resist and try to.
That's interesting.
Excuse me for interrupting. I absolutely agree on you. We should see it on the big screen. It would be much better, and still people who want to see it can see it in the cinema and online. So please come there, and there is enough space still in the cinema. So. And also your film, Katharina, would be much nicer on the big screen. So let's start talking about your work. Similar like with Alexandre on your homepage, I find a lot of different works. You're drawing, painting, doing photography, collage, print art, and I also watched a few of your earlier films. You have been doing animated films since 2009. I watched films like Stone Age from 214. But I must be honest, I really discovered your work with this last film, Der natürliche Tod der Maus, The Natural Death of the Mouse. And I think it's just one of the most outstanding films in this festival. This 20 minutes passed like a dream for me, and I couldn't really say why. But maybe we can explore some of the elements which are so fascinating in your work. And to go into it, let's just watch a short clip from the beginning of your film, if you agree. Good.
Der flächendeckende Einsatz von Pestiziden bei Bananen gehört für Petra Müller zum Geschäft.
Anders ist die Sikatoka. Das ist eine Pilzerkrankung, die die Banane befällt, fast nicht unter Kontrolle zu halten. Sie können nicht verlangen, dass Sie eine einwandfreie, qualitativ hochwertige Banane haben wollen, aber bitte keine Anbringung von Pestiziden zur Bekämpfung dieser
Es ist doch aber
Krankheit.
so, dass diese Ausbringung von Pestiziden per Flugzeug ganz schöne Risiken für die Leute hat, die vor Ort arbeiten.
Ja, das ist so. Das ist traurig. Das ist so.
Dieser Anspruch kostet das Leben vieler Arbeiter hier in Ecuador, vieler Kinder. Und er verseucht unser Wasser, denn die Pestizide haben verheerende Auswirkungen auf die Umwelt.
Die Welt wirst du eh nicht retten können, sagte ihre Mama immer. Und das stimmt. Dafür muss man sich ein wenig opfern. Wie Mama.
Okay. I think there are several reasons. First of all, thank you, Katharina, for letting us choose the clips to show. And I think there are several reasons why I have chosen this first clip here. First of all, maybe about your method. You're mixing animation, your hand drawings with quotations from quotations from from art history. So you're showing different images from art history, but also live action film. So this mix of material is something quite fascinating, and I think also new compared to the films you made before. So what is your idea behind your motivation to do this kind of mix?
Yeah, well, exactly. This was the first time I started mixing all up. Before that, it was more straightforward, but it's just because I guess I had many more ideas that I wanted to put in the film, and then for animation, it's hard to make films too long. Also, it's the format, you know. So maybe there's a practical side to it, because if you see a famous painting or that we all know in our culture, we have associations immediately. So it's kind of within a couple of seconds, you can convey a certain subject, a discussion, a mood, a time. So maybe it's just a shortcut. So I don't have to explain all of it in working with this. And then the live action, the same, you know. It's actually a shortcut because maybe I was also too lazy to animate all of it. And it's just the way sometimes ideas come. You see something and you grab here, grab it. And then I wanted to try to just mesh it in all in one and see if it would work. So I wouldn't say I have a specific method. It was all quite intuitive. So I discovered it as I was doing it. Of course, I had a story and a sort of a storyboard beforehand. But while also writing and thinking, all these images popped into my head. And I tried not to censor them, so just put them in the film and see if they could communicate with each other.
But I mean, for me or for the audience, those images from outside world, let's say, they also open perspectives and associations which are most interesting. The live action, is it found footage or?
Some of it, I shot it like this, what we see, the landscape where she's running. That's what I did. I shot it with Lomo Kino, you know, this little camera you can roll, like you put a normal 35mm film and then you roll by hand. I shot it. The flowers, I mustn't shamelessly, I got them from the internet.
Okay. That's nice. Why not?
But it's like license-free footage, old stuff that nobody knows where it's coming from. But I thought it was beautiful. And then the scene, I wanted to make something very cheesy. And I thought, yes, of course, the flowers, this is the beauty, because she's coming from the situation where, yeah, problems of the world. And then she's having her time taking care of herself, you know, going for a jog, and then fantasizing about the beauty that she could create.
Is this you?
No.
Okay, it's just the main person. No, I'm just asking because I mean what you just said, I think is a method which comes more often in the film, that you're touching several important topics of the problems of the world we are facing right now, the pesticides and then the war and that. But these topics, they are not consequently followed like that this is a film about pesticides or about war, but they're kind of popping up all the time. So it's kind of it seems to be a method that you're always going back to the real world and to but then into this inner world of this person who tries to escape from the problems and running away and finding a way out. But then there are also this very personal level in the film that very often it goes to, like when he talks about his mother, and there are other scenes which illustrate that a bit. So this moving backward and forward between the outside world and and this inner perspective of the main character, that's something quite interesting in the film. And at the end, we don't talk about the end because the people still should watch the film, and we are presenting some scenes which should make them curious to watch it still than in the full length. But this seems to be a strategy to me, as far as I
would not say that she's running away necessarily, but at some point, I don't remember where, someone told me that that the whole film might be a character of a generation, or, you know, like a certain time nowadays where people struggle with all these contradictions. Like, you know what you're supposed to do, you know what's good to do, but then there are all these other things, and it's hard to find the way to behave in a good way. So be conscious of all the problems, trying to solve them, but in fact you cannot. And then what is left to do is just caring about yourself, because nowadays we also are asked to care more about ourselves, like meditation, mindfulness, and all of these things, which is great. But at the same time, it's going back and forth, as you say, like, to the outside world, we want to change something, but can we do this? So I know I'm losing a bit of thread, but you know what I mean. It's like contradiction between the self and what you think is right, and then the outside world, and where you think, like, in order to change something, you have to sacrifice something from yourself. But at the same time, you have to take care of yourself. Because if you're not, you know, in a good state, then you cannot change the world or whatever, you know. And there are these. Actually, may I just jump back to the question with the live action footage? And also, I think the other reason for me is also more of the problem of animation sometimes, to me. Like, if you have a cartoon in this film, it's very cartoony, it's very colorful. What I did, like some films before, it was more minimal and black and white. And often I watch an animation film, and then I still, even if I think it's a good film and I enjoy it, something is not there. It's not the same experience when I watch a live action film. And I guess it's because of the reality. So for me, it was important to give this character some sort of feeling that this person could exist beyond the animation, that maybe if we don't see her, she's there somewhere doing stuff. And I think, I will not talk about this, but the last part of the film is the most important to me, to make her real. So also giving moments of like all the paintings, like a reference to art and also references to this archival footage, live action footage, gives us more connection to our tactile real world. I think this was also a reason to do it for me. Sorry, I'm diverting.
No, it's okay. Maybe we just jump into the next clip to open another topic. And we will.
Wie geht's? Gut. Und dir? Auch gut, danke. Ja, der Papa ist arbeiten. Glücklich? Ja, sehr glücklich. So ein Kind ist auch gut für die Beziehung. Alles wird besser. Du musst auch eins machen. Willst du mal halten?
Wer bist du?
Ich bin deine imaginäre, ungewollte Tochter.
Und was kannst du so?
Alles, was du willst. Ich bin lieb, intelligent und nicht egoistisch. Darf ich auf deinen Schoß?
The perfect child.
It's an interesting episode in the film. This topic of expectations, so the role of what is expected, yeah, and then this daughter, this imagined daughter, is in the film for a while, and then this disappears again, and they have this communication, which is very strange. And but it's, yeah, maybe you want to elaborate a bit on this idea of this daughter, which is not really existing.
Well, this daughter is also an alter ego, maybe, of this character, you know, projection of wishes or struggles, you know, because yes, still it's the case that in our society we're expected to have children at some point, and you know, it's always such a big pressure. You know, I have no children. I don't know how it feels to have them, but there's always the anxiety. What if this human being is not nice that I create? You know, and in the film, the main subject is this issue of being maybe a good person or wanting to be a good person and wondering what is it, what is this, how to be a good person. And it's always connected to the subject of sacrificing something. You have, in order to change something to be good, I guess you need to sacrifice. And then there comes this idea of the mother. And for me, it's not necessarily a perspective of like, because I'm a woman, whatever, but it's still expected. As a mother, you sacrifice a lot from yourself, from your life, and give. It's still a cliche in our society. So this character probably is struggling with this too.
Yeah.
How much is she willing to give? And of course, if this child will be nice, intelligent, you know, maybe it would make things easier.
Okay.
I don't know how what else to say. It's well, certain things, of course, they are personal, and this conversation of this young mother that she's meeting at the bus stop, this is reality. I mean, this is like something I've heard many times before.
Yeah.
And the character in that moment doesn't really know what to do with this. So, but why? What was it for you?
No, I thought it's a critical standpoint about this expectation of society that women should have children, and it's, of course, you're criticizing this, but on the other hand, it was not clear for me really, because there is such a lovely relationship between them. So I was just curious about.
Yes, exactly. I mean, I would not criticize our society and its expectations, because I don't find it weird. It's still kind of normal thing, and I don't want to open up a new like this big subject. But of course, women are made biologically to have kids, so it's not. I don't find it surprising that it's still expected in a way.
The dialogue with the mother with the child is quite ironic,
but it is, of course. So
you have to laugh about it. It's really so stupid how she defends this, but then, yeah, I mean, it opens up a topic of discussion, but then it disappears again in a way. The daughter suddenly she's not there anymore.
In the beginning, we also have this emoji person sitting there smoking, saying, "Well, if you want to save the world, you have to sacrifice something, and be more like a mother." Maybe. So it, on the one hand, it is, of course, some sort of criticism and maybe irony, or maybe even, if I want to be more mean, making fun of these young mothers that are justifying something. But at the same time, this is her imaginary daughter. So maybe there's still this wish, thinking that could be nice, no? Having a child.
That was my feeling to it as well, yeah.
There's some kind of nostalgia towards something that maybe this character will never have, or decided not to have, I don't know. So it's something in between. I never want to judge, is this good or not? That's always the...
Maybe we should jump to, because I think we can only show one more piece, but since you also mentioned it in your synopsis, it might have an important role in the film. Maybe we can still manage one more clip. And you could explain us a bit about that. If I remember correctly, I think in one of your film descriptions, you say that you had the power that the head is falling off of people just because you imagine that. So
yeah, it's in the beginning of the film. There are these two lines. Like one day she imagines that flowers are growing out of her footsteps, and some days everything seems terrible, and there is this wish of just beheading everything and everyone that seems not good enough. No, it's all again there. It's this balance. Sometimes, you want to be good, you want to be nice, you want to be patient, sacrificing, the Jesus-like figure, whatever. And then sometimes maybe it seems like maybe it's not the way. Maybe we cannot change anything if we're just nice. Flowers will not change the world. Maybe we need to have some violence and force and then solve problems in that way. But then again, we know revolutions. We know it's a cycle, and it's always a back and forth between this. It's an inner conflict. So this is just a fantasy. I don't know if you experience this may be something personal. There are really days where I walk out and it seems like, what is going on? Everyone seems so ugly and nasty. But it's, I guess, because my mood is strange. And then I feel like someone's looking in a weird way. And what is this boy doing with the dog? Why is this, mother giving this very bad food to her baby? And it seems like you want things to disappear. And of course, in that, it's like one step further, just being very violent in a fantasy. And then some days you go out and it seems like, oh my God, the world is beautiful. Everyone's smiling, and you see people, they look at you, you smile at, and you're like floating around.
I think we have something like 2 minutes left, and I would still like to show this the clip of your film, the trailer, because it kind of yeah, it really compresses a lot of topics still. But I don't know if some of you still want to ask something, and I don't know, maybe we can have 5 minutes more in this meeting. I don't really know, but yeah. Is there still something from your side? And I just see from Polona, she says no problem if we make it a bit longer. But is there still something Wiktoria or Alex want to ask? Or
I think it would be nice to see the trailer still, to have like an overview, and maybe then we can after that also have time for one last question and a wrap up. That would be great.
Okay, let's do
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Well, I also found it super fascinating how you combine like all those art pieces then with the normal life, because it's somehow like life, everything is there in a way. And also what you have been talking about, like this inner conflict of how can I be good, I can't, I need to, I don't know, I need to rest, or I need to buy this really crappy thing that costs only €5, but it kind of destroys the world. So maybe you can. I would like to hear from you as well. But how did you gather your ideas? Because it's so rich of ideas. Is that something that, I don't know? Do you have a diary or something that you put in all these ideas, and then you put them together as ideas for the film?
Well, in this case, not a diary, but it's true. This one consists of different pieces from every. Also, now watching the trailer, the sound was very important in this film. I wanted to drown it in constant different sounds and music. And this happened just throughout the years. I had situations, conversations, music pieces, moments that I collected, and it was always in my head, and I never knew where to put them. And then it all started with the mouse. That this is the biographical part of the movie, that I have witnessed a cat, playing with the mouse, which is kind of natural, right? Normal. But then I didn't know what to do. I didn't know, shall I save the mouse because the cat has cat food and it doesn't have to kill the mouse. But then I thought maybe my housemates will be happy to have one mouse less in our house. So I let them do what they do, and actually I took pictures of them. So, but it stayed in my head, and I always knew that I want to do something with this very, quotidian, how do you say?
Everyday situation.
Which is, as it is in the title, natural. Yes, and then this thing with the bananas and all the other things, and it was just in my head, and at some point I just sat down and decided to write it all down. And the only structural element for all these ideas was I decided, okay, I need a character, I will put this character, and it's kind of a day. And we follow her throughout her day. It's super simple, not super original, but it was a solution to
have a structure.
Exactly. Maybe it's not even a day, maybe it's a week, we don't know. The time frame is not clear, but
And you mentioned that it's the big difference also to your the films before is that you really use this very expressive colors and like comic almost comic art. Can you explain why it was important for you to put it in? Like we have when the heads fall down is almost like a nightmarish situation.
I decided to try out to be a little bit over the top or against my own taste. Try it because I find it sometimes interesting. Now also, we haven't talked about it, but I'm shooting a feature film right now, and even now I'm trying to go against my own ideas sometimes, and to do with certain things a little bit the opposite of what I was thinking about. It's still going, along my interest somehow, but and before that I made black and white, just ink on paper, and it's always a contrast. After finishing one project, I feel like I want to do something completely different. So that's just not even intellectual, conceptual reason. It was more personal, just trying to do something different. See, and I also wanted to go on the board of cheesiness or tackiness and play a little bit with the, how do you say it in English, pathos. To try out if I can do it without, being horrible. And I feel it's on the edge, but so for me it still works. Same with the music.
Yeah, well, I'm also looking very much forward to see it on the big screen. But maybe for a last question, if Thomas doesn't have any more after mine, but I will just go in. You just said you're shooting a fiction and live action film right now. I'm really curious what can we expect of that, because this film is also kind of has this dreamlike situations and is super absurd sometimes, and has these so many elements in it. What is there to expect from a feature live action film from you? Can you talk about it?
I would say, I'm also excited to find out what it's going to be, because the writing was one process. Now we're shooting it, and I'm just trying also to allow chaos into the shooting. It's not planned out every day. We kind of know what we're going to shoot, which scenes, because there is a script, but we discover on set how and what with the actors and with the camera. So we're not really preparing. We're just going and shooting. So it's a chaos of footage, and I will figure out what it's going to be when editing. So
super. I think we have to wrap up. There was the 5 minutes plus. Thank you so much. Thanks for both of us for being here, sharing insights of your work. And if any of people who are watching are in Vienna, please come to the cinema, the Stadtkino tomorrow, and where you can see both of their works. On the screen, on the big screen, with the sound turned on loud enough so you can really immerse yourself into both of the films. Thank you, Katharina, and thank you, Alexandre. Thanks so much.
Thank you.